Welcome back everyone. In this lesson we are going to be creating our player controller. Now this player controller will allow us to move around the map, jump, look around with the camera, as well as allow us to shoot our weapon, take damage, and when our health reaches 0 we will die and the game will be over. Alright, so here's just some two images of what it will look like. On the left is what will be seen through our camera view in the final version of the game, and on the right is what it will look like in the scene view. We have our capsule collider to allow us to detect collisions, we have our camera looking at where we are looking, and as well as that we have our gun model which we'll be shooting bullets from. Alright, so with that all said, let's hop inside of Unity and begin to create our player controller. Alright, inside of Unity here, we want to first of all make sure that we are inside the game scene. We are, so let's hop into the scene view here. And what we want to do, first of all, is create a sort of platform for our player, because if we create the player controller now, we'll just fall right through in the sky. We won't know if we're moving, we won't know if we're falling. So we need something to stand on first of all, and also something to be able to know if we're moving at all, or if we're jumping. So, in here I'm going to right click in the hierarchy and create a new empty object. And I'm going to call this one _map. Now this empty game object isn't going to be anything per se, it's more going to be a container. It's going to be a container that is going to be holding all of our environmental or map objects. Alright, I'm going to set to 000 just so it's center and easy to work with. And I'm also going to change my tool to the move tool, because at the moment I did have it on the rect tool. We don't need that yet, so we can just click up here to change it to the move tool. And now as a child of main camera, of the map I'm going to right click on the map and I'm going to go 3D object cube. And this will create a new cube, and this is what we're going to be using for the ground. I'll change the scale to about 20 by 20 by, let's go 20 by 2 by 20. So we have a nice large platform here. And now with that done, we can actually create our player controller. So I'm going to right click here in the hierarchy and go 3D object capsule. And here we go, we've got our player capsule right here. For now we are going to use a capsule for both the enemy and the player. With later on we will be implementing the final models, so it does look a bit nicer. Let's set this position to 000 with a Y position of 2, so that the player is now sitting on top of the cube like so. You may notice that the shadows look kind of odd. It does seem there is this orangey grey tint and the shadows are pitch black. And the reason for this is because of the lighting. We need to go into the lighting menu here. If you don't have this menu up already, you can open it by going to Window, Rendering, then Lighting Settings, and this should open up the lighting window here. And all we want to do is click on Auto Generate down here. And what this will do is auto generate the lighting whenever there's a change in the scene. So we'll just click on that. Shouldn't take too long, and there we go. Everything is set up the way it should be. This may also already be ticked for you, but for me it wasn't, so we just need to make sure that we have auto generate on. Alright, with that we can go back to our inspector, and what we are going to do now is set up some materials for the ground. We don't need material for the player, since the player is not going to be visible to us inside of the game. So let's go to our materials folder. I'm going to right click here, go create, material, and I'm just going to call this material ground. Oops, ground. And to apply it we can just drag it on like so. And we want this to be a sort of green grass sort of material, something that could be outdoors. So I'm going to lower this first of all, since we don't need a preview that large, and I'm going to change the smoothness all the way down to 0. Since we don't want it to be really shiny, we want it to be sort of a flat color. And with the smoothness down to 0, let's click on the albedo here, and we're going to change the albedo color to a green. So I'm just going to change it to green, see what sort of green we want. Yep, something like that I'd say. Let's have a look in the game view. Oh, we can't actually see anything in the game view right now, so let's go back to our scene view. And what we want to do is click on our capsule here, and I'm going to rename this to player. Now let's attach the camera to the player. So I'm going to click on the main camera, drag that in as a child to the player here, and I'm going to set the camera's position to 0000, so it's right in the center of the player here. But we want it on top of the player's head, so let's set the Y position here to 1. And if we look in the game view, this is what the player will be seeing. Now with that done, what we need to do is click on our player and add one more component that we need. Because right now if we were to press play, or if we were to implement our movement and all that, nothing would really happen because there is no physics being applied to our player. If we were to jump up in the air, it wouldn't work. If we're going to walk off the edge, we wouldn't fall over. And that is because we need a rigid body component attached to the player. So let's do that now. Let's click Add Component, and I'm going to find Rigid Body. And this will basically apply physics to our player, allow our player to fall over, allow us to move by changing the velocity of the player, all the sort of physics stuff that you would expect from a real-life object inside of a world determined by physics. But something we do want to do with this is open up the constraints pop down here, and with this what we want to do is freeze the X, Y, and Z rotation. And the reason for that is because if we were to just leave that alone, set up our movement, and move around, we would eventually fall over sideways. And we do not want our player to be falling over sideways, as that would basically ruin the game for us. We wouldn't be able to get back up. So we are going to be freezing the X, Y, and Z rotations. The Y rotation, we will be manually changing inside of the script for us to rotate horizontally to face wherever we move, wherever we rotate based on the mouse input for the camera look. But yep, we'll just set this freeze rotation here. And apart from that, we should be all good to go. The final thing we need to do is set up a simple little gun model for us so that we can see sort of a visual representation of where we're aiming at. Okay, so as a child of the main camera, and the reason why we're doing it as a child of the main camera and not the player is because if we were to look horizontally, for example, the gun would stay there, but if we look up, we need the gun to also move up as well. So we need to pretty much track wherever the camera is looking. So as a child of main camera, what I'm going to do is create a new empty object, and I'm going to call this one our weapon. And then let's move this weapon forward a bit here. The blue axis is the forward axis. This is where we're looking right now, and this is where we're going to be looking. We're always going to have this blue axis facing forward, which is the Z axis, which is the forward axis. So as a child of weapon then, I'm going to create a new 3D object cube here. It's pretty large, so let's bring it down to a 0.1, 0.1, 0.1 scale. I'm also going to remove the box collider, as we don't need a collider on our weapon, and it might actually interfere with our bullets when we start shooting them. So we can look in the game view now and see that we have our cube right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the weapon here, and I'm going to position it down so this weapon is pretty much down at the bottom of our screen and a bit to the right. So I'm going to set this Y to maybe negative 0.2. Let's set the Z. Let's bring it a bit close to us. We'll go 0.5. Let's bring this X to now 0.1, 0.2. We'll set to 0.2 there. And now what we can do is start to model our gun. Now we don't have to be too complex with this model. It's just going to be a nice simple model. So I'm going to get the cube here, and I'm going to press R to go to the scaling tool, and this will allow us to pretty much just resize this however we want. So I'm just going to resize it a bit like that, so it's got a bit of a barrel. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, and to do that we can just go Control D, and it creates another cube here, which is the exact same. And I'm going to move it on the axis here. So what I can do is click on this red square here, and you see it moves on the x-axis like so. So I'm going to move it down here. Let's actually move the weapon forward a bit for now so I can model the handle. I'm going to press R to go to the rotate tool, and I'm going to rotate it along the x-axis here, so it is a bit like that maybe. Let's go back to the scaling tool by pressing R. Click on the white square to uniformly scale it down or up. I'm going to scale it down about there. Move it back over here. And there we go. We've got our weapon here. Now let's also make a material for our gun. So I'm going to create a new material here in our materials folder. And this is going to be called weapon. And then we can just apply it to both of our cubes. So cube 1 and the cube. I'm going to change the smoothness down to 0 again since we don't want it really to be shiny. And for the albedo, we'll just change this to a grey like so. Alright, we can go back into the game view, click on our weapon, and I'm just going to position it where it looks best. So let's try 0.6 on the x-axis, on the Z position I mean. For the Y, we'll go negative point, let's say 2. Yeah, so we'll just keep it like that for now. And there we go. That is our player controller pretty much set up and ready to go. In the next lesson, we'll start to script our player controller, so we're going to be able to move around, jump, and actually look around as well with the camera. So yeah, I'll see you all then in the next lesson.